Hello, this is another History Revision podcast. This time it's the economy 1964 to 1970. The situation in 1964. Well, when Labour took over, the deficit was more than £400 million and there was a balance of payments crisis. Therefore, Labour had to curtail or even abandon many election promises. They had to choose either between devaluation of the pound or deflation, and Wilson wanted to avoid both. Deflation because it would carry on stop-go, and devaluation because Labour had been associated with devaluation in the past, particularly in the 1940s, where he himself was involved. So the policies they introduced were to do with modernisation. It was a key priority, although it had been for Macmillan's government as well, as we were lagging behind Germany and Japan. One of the phrases was the white heat of technological revolution, and he wanted policies for economic growth. We were trapped in the stop-go cycle, and we needed to reorganise the economy to break this cycle through government intervention in business, according to Wilson, although again Macmillan had been doing this in the late 60s. The Industrial Reorganisation Commission encouraged mergers of companies to enable British companies to compete worldwide, for example ICL, International Computers Limited, and British Leyland. Labour created the DEA, the Department of Economic Affairs, led by George Brown, the problem being it overlapped with the Treasury, and the other problem being George Brown himself was unpredictable at best. And this is because Wilson believed the Treasury to be sluggish and unadventurous. The 1965 National Plan for Economy, which was a good example of government intervention, coordinated economic modernisation and stimulated industrial production, or was supposed to, by encouraging cooperation between government, employers and trade unions. But they encountered a lot of economic problems. The high value of the pound against the dollar made foreign goods expensive, and that was a key problem. Relative decline was still going on. We were still spending too much on defence and too little in research and development. We had to go to the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, for a loan in 1964. In 1966, the DEA faded away, and the national plan had kind of failed and was dropped quietly in 1967. The Prices and Incomes policy was backed up with the Prices and Income Board to control inflation, but didn't go down too well with a lot of people. The seamen strike caused the sterling crisis in 1966, and there was an emergency budget in the same year, and it raised taxes and cut public spending. Not a Labour thing to do. Exchange controls were introduced so that tourists couldn't take more than £50 out of the country, for example. The Arab-Israeli War of 1967 forced the closure of the Suez Canal, and Arab countries switched pounds to dollars, which didn't help. The IMF loan in 1967, again, was only seen as a stopgap, but all this is blown off course by various strikes, including the Dockers strike as well. Problems had an effect on policy, like postponing school leaving age, being risen to 16, and the building of houses. In the end, Callaghan announced in the Commons that we would devalue the pound, as Wilson had been avoiding all along. So the pound dropped to $2.40 from $2.80, and that was a 14% drop. And Wilson went on national TV saying that the pound in your pocket would not be worth any less, and was mocked ever afterwards for saying that, because it was obviously not true. However, he did go on to say that prices would rise, so he was not trying to pull the wool over our eyes totally. Callaghan resigned over this, and it ended up needing to be a reintroduction of prescription charges, and also the abolishing of milk in secondary schools as a result of the devaluation. Actually, the government had overestimated the seriousness of the balance of payments, and it was only public spending that was causing the deficit. Private industry was flourishing. The devaluation, some people have said, actually helped Jenkins recover the economy by 1970. In the same year, the EEC application was made, and it was made mainly on economic grounds. UK would supposedly benefit from the six, or if we didn't join, we would get left behind. From 1967 onwards, when Roy Jenkins took over, he used deflationary methods. Devaluation actually did help as well. Deflationary methods were raising taxes and tightening up public spending. It made the government unpopular, but it actually got us into a balance of payments surplus by 1970. So let's have a look at the historical interpretation on this. Rose says that the establishment placed obstacles in the way of Labour policies. For example, the civil service did, the city did, the Tory press did, and that didn't help them. Lynch said the government had very little effect on industry, and he also says that devaluation was too theatrical. The unions and the left were both angered by Wilson's attempt to blame devaluation on the unions. Derek Murphy says the economy dominated the government for nearly 6 years of its existence, and he also says in practice neither the planning nor the new technology received a high priority within the new administration. Murphy goes on to say investment in research and development of new products was largely swallowed up by the arms industry, and what remained tended to be used for a few high-profile projects such as Concorde or nuclear energy. Derek Murphy also says low employment was a feature of the period. Ken Morgan says the national plan had no real regulation or procedure for raising production or exports. Glynn and Booth argue that the main reason for poor economic performance was poor management, citing the low number of graduate managers proportionally compared to countries like America. That's it for this one. See you next time with politics in 1970 to 74. Bye bye.